Arthur Halloway had left London behind on the morning train, trading the restless hum of the capital for the silence of the countryside. In London, he had been a detective of some repute, once with Scotland Yard, later on his own, chasing down thieves, killers, and liars in smoke-filled alleys and neon-lit clubs. He knew the city's pulse, fast, dirty, relentless. Blackwood, he suspected, would be none of those things. The letter from Whitehall had been brief. 6 disappearances in Blackwood. Handle it quietly. That was all. Arthur hadn't asked for clarification. He didn't need to. He knew why they'd chosen him. He got results. The divisions inside the government were obvious. Some wanted the truth. Others wanted it buried. That wasn't his concern. His concern was the case. And, though he would never admit it to the men in London, there was another reason. It had been 20 years since he had last seen his brother. The train screeched into the station under a curtain of rain. Arthur stepped down onto the slick platform, his trench coat already heavy with water. The air smelled of coal smoke and wet iron. Blackwood was not the backwater he remembered from childhood visits. Neon signs glowed faintly through the storm. A cinema marquee flickered, and the streets were lined with cars glistening under the lamps. Yet the rain made everything look distorted, as though the town itself were dissolving. He lit a cigarette, shielding the flame from the downpour. A few passengers hurried past him, collars turned up, eyes fixed on the ground. No one lingered. No one ever lingered in Blackwood. The cab ride through town was silent. The driver, a gaunt man with hollow cheeks, spoke only once. "You're here for the missing, aren't you?" His voice was flat, resigned. Arthur didn't answer. He didn't need to. The driver gave a humorous chuckle. "Then you won't be staying long." The car stopped in front of a modest row of brick houses. Arthur stepped out, rain soaking his hat brim, and walked up to the door he remembered from boyhood. He knocked once. The door opened slowly. William stood there, older, heavier, his face carved by years of labor. For a moment, neither spoke. Then William stepped aside. "You'd better come in." The house smelled of damp, wood, and tobacco. A single lamp lit the small living room. Arthur set down his suitcase, scanning the familiar space. William poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one over. 20 years, William said at last. His voice was rough but steady. Arthur raised the glass. Too long. They drank in silence. Outside, the rain hammered the windows. "You shouldn't have come," William muttered. "This town is not the same. People disappear, and no one asks questions. Best you keep your head down." Arthur's expression didn't change. "That's not why I'm here." Later, in the small guest room, Arthur unpacked methodically, laying out his revolver on the nightstand. He sat by the window, watching the street below. The rain blurred the lamps into halos of light. A lone figure walked past, head bowed, coat soaked through. Arthur leaned closer, but in the puddle at the curb, the figure's reflection looked up directly at him. Arthur's breath slowed. He blinked, and the reflection was gone. The figure outside never looked up, never paused. Then he saw his own reflection in the same puddle. It raised a cigarette to its lips a moment too late, its timing off, and then it smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that never touched his own face. Arthur didn't flinch. He took a drag from his cigarette, exhaled smoke, and muttered under his breath. Noted, the reflection dissolved into ripples, leaving only the rain. He sat back, listening to the storm. London had taught him to expect lies, but never from his own reflection. Here in Blackwood, the rain wasn't just weather. It was watching. Morning came gray and heavy, the rain still falling in sheets against the windows of William's modest house. Arthur rose early, dressed with his usual precision, and joined his brother at the kitchen table. William was already there, hunched over a mug of strong tea, his face lined with fatigue. "You're really going through with this," William said without looking up. Arthur buttoned his coat. "I didn't come all this way to sit inside and drink tea." William's eyes flicked to him, sharp but weary. "This town doesn't want answers. It wants silence. You'll find that out soon enough." Arthur didn't reply. He finished his tea, set the cup down, and stepped out into the rain. The streets of Blackwood were alive despite the storm. Cars splashed through puddles. Neon signs buzzed faintly above shop fronts, and the cinema marquee advertised a new American thriller. Yet beneath the hum of modern life, Arthur felt the weight of unease. People moved quickly, avoiding eye contact, as if the rain itself carried secrets they dared not share. Arthur's first stop was the police station, a squat brick building with fluorescent lights humming overhead. It smelled of damp paper and stale tobacco. The desk sergeant, a broad man with thinning hair, looked up as Arthur entered. "Halloway." Arthur introduced himself, flashing the government letter. "I'm here about the disappearances." The sergeant's expression tightened. He took the letter, glanced at it, and handed it back. "We filed our reports. Nothing more to add." Arthur studied him. 6 people vanished in less than a year. That's not nothing. The sergeant shifted uncomfortably. People leave. They move on. Blackwood's not for everyone. Arthur leaned closer, his voice low but firm. And yet their belongings remain. Their wages uncollected. Their families still waiting. That's not moving on. That's something else. The sergeant's jaw worked, but he said nothing. Arthur left him to his silence. By midday, Arthur found himself in the Crown, a pub near the center of town. The place was dim, the air thick with smoke and the smell of wet coats. Men sat hunched over pints, their conversations dropping to murmurs as Arthur entered. He ordered a whiskey, neat, and took a seat near the back. For a long while, no one approached him. Then an older man, his face weathered and his hands trembling slightly, slid onto the bench opposite. "You're the one from London," the man said, voice rough. Arthur nodded. "And you are?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is this. You won't find answers here. Not the kind you're looking for." Arthur sipped his drink. "Then tell me what kind I should be looking for." The man's eyes darted around the room. The missing, they didn't just vanish. They were taken. And everyone knows who's behind it. But no one dares speak. Arthur leaned forward. "Who?" Before the man could answer, pub door slammed open. 2 men entered, their coats dripping, their eyes fixed on Arthur. They moved with purpose, hands hidden beneath their jackets. Arthur's instincts sharpened. He slid his glass aside and rose slowly. The first shot shattered the silence, glass exploding behind him. Patrons screamed and ducked for cover. Arthur drew his revolver in one smooth motion, returning fire. The pub erupted in chaos. Chairs overturned, bottles shattered, the acrid smell of gunpowder mixing with smoke and rain. Puddles spreading across the floor from a spilled pint. The reflections of the gunmen shifted. One appeared closer than he was, the other further away. Arthur hesitated for a fraction of a second, his mind catching the lie. The reflections were wrong. A bullet grazed his shoulder, snapping him back to reality. He fired twice, striking one man in the leg. The other flight, disappearing into the storm outside. The pub fell, silent, except for the rain hammering the windows. Arthur stood, breathing hard, his revolver steady. The wounded man groaned on the floor, clutching his leg. Arthur crouched beside him. "Who sent you?" The man spat blood, eyes burning with defiance. "You should have stayed in London." Arthur pressed the barrel lightly against the man's chest. "Names!" But the man only laughed, a hollow, broken sound. His eyes rolled back, and he went limp. Arthur checked his pulse. Dead. The patrons stared at him in silence, fear etched on their faces. No one spoke. No one moved. Arthur holstered his revolver and walked out into the rain. Back at William's house, his brother was waiting, arms crossed. "You're bleeding," William said flatly. Arthur glanced at his shoulder. The graze was shallow, nothing serious. "I've had worse." William shook his head. "You don't understand. This town is not just men you're up against. It's something else. Something in the rain." Arthur met his gaze. "You've seen it." William's face paled. "Then you know." Arthur poured himself a drink, his hand steady. "I know enough to keep going." Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the glass. Arthur looked out the window. In the puddle beneath the street lamp, his reflection stared back at him. This time it didn't smile. It simply watched, unblinking, as if waiting for him to make his next move. Arthur raised his glass in a silent toast to the reflection. Noted, he murmured. The reflection tilted its head, just slightly, before dissolving into ripples. Arthur turned away, his mind already working. The case was no longer just about missing people. It was about the town itself, the silence of its people, and the rain that lied. And he intended to uncover every truth Blackwood tried to bury. The rain had not stopped. It never seemed to in Blackwood. By the third night, Arthur had grown accustomed to its rhythm, the steady percussion against the windows of William's house. But he had also learned to distrust it. The reflections in the puddles, the way glass and water seemed to lie, had become part of the case. The official channels were closed to him. The police had made that clear. Reports were missing, witnesses silenced, and the sergeant at the desk had looked at him with the same mixture of fear and contempt he had seen in the pub. If the truth was anywhere, it was hidden inside the very building that claimed to uphold the law. Arthur decided he would not wait for permission. He left Williams' house after midnight, trench coat collar turned up against the storm. The streets were nearly empty, save for the occasional car splashing through the gutters. The police station loomed ahead, its fluorescent lights buzzing faintly through the rain. Arthur circled the building, studying its entrances. The front was too exposed. He found a side door near the alley, locked but poorly maintained. A thin blade and steady hands were enough to slip it open. Inside, the corridors smelled of damp paper and disinfectant. The hum of the lights echoed in the silence. Arthur moved quickly, his footsteps soundless on the linoleum. He wasn't alone. 2 guards turned the corner ahead, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. Arthur pressed himself against the wall, waiting. When they drew close, he stepped forward with precision. The first man went down with a sharp blow to the throat, the second with a strike to the temple. Both collapsed silently. Arthur dragged them into a storage closet, checked their pulses, alive, just unconscious, and continued. He moved deeper into the station, past rows of filing cabinets and locked offices. Then he saw it, a corridor marked restricted access. At the end stood a heavy metal cabinet, bolted to the wall. Something about its placement was wrong, too deliberate. Arthur tested it. The cabinet shifted slightly. Behind it, the faint outline of a door. The hidden door opened onto a narrow staircase, descending into the earth. The air grew colder, damp with the smell of mildew and rust. At the bottom, the steel door stood ajar. Arthur pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was windowless, lit by flickering neon tubes. Rows of shelves lined the walls, stacked with files, ledgers, and boxes. A large table stood in the center, covered with documents. On a far wall hung a cracked mirror, its surface warped by age and moisture. Arthur approached the table. The files were meticulous. Names, dates, photographs of a missing, each marked with a red stamp. Selected, he flipped through the ledgers. They were written in a careful hand, blending bureaucratic precision with something darker. References to the covenant, to the offering, to the rain's demand. The names of local officials appeared again and again, alongside symbols Arthur did not recognize. It was not incompetence that had silenced the police. It was complicity. Arthur's jaw tightened. He had seen corruption before, but never like this. This was not about money or power. This was ritual. He turned toward the mirror. His reflection stared back, pale under the flickering light. For a moment, it seemed ordinary. Then it moved. Arthur froze. The reflection raised its hand before he did, fingers brushing the glass. Its lips moved, forming words he could not hear. Then it smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of the mouth that never touched Arthur's own face. Arthur stepped closer, revolver drawn. The reflection tilted its head, studying him like a predator. Behind it, in the warped glass, he thought he saw others, faces half-formed, eyes staring, mouths open in silent screams. The neon light flickered. The reflection leaned forward, pressing its palm against the inside of the mirror. A thin crack spread across the glass, spiderwebbing outward. Arthur steadied his breathing. He lowered the revolver. Shooting glass would solve nothing. Instead, he whispered, almost himself, "Note it." The reflection's smile widened, then dissolved into ripples, leaving only his own face staring back. Arthur gathered as many documents as he could carry, stuffing them into his coat. He retraced his steps up the staircase, past the unconscious guards, and out into the storm. The rain greeted him like an accomplice, drenching his coat, blurring the street lights into halos. He walked quickly, head down, the weight of the files heavy against his chest. Back at Williams' house, he spread the documents across the table. William stood behind him, silent, reading over his shoulder. They knew, Arthur said flatly. The police, the council, half the men who run this town. They've been feeding people to it, to what Everson rain. William's face was pale. Arthur, you don't understand. This isn't just politics. It's older than the mines, older than the town itself. You can't fight it. Arthur lit a cigarette, the flame trembling slightly in his hand. He exhaled smoke, eyes fixed on the files. I fought worse men than these, he said, and I've never walked away from the truth. Outside, the rain hammered the windows. In the puddle beneath the street lamp, his reflection stood waiting. The storm had grown heavier, as if the sky itself were conspiring to drown the town. Sheets of rain blurred the street lamps into halos, and the gutters overflowed with rushing water. Arthur sat at William's kitchen table, the stolen files spread before him. Cigarette smoke curled upward, mixing with the damp air. The pattern was clear now. Each disappearance matched a date of torrential rain. The file spoke of selections, of offerings, and of a covenant that demanded blood. The next date was circled in red ink. Tomorrow. Arthur tapped ash into a tray. They're planning another one. William stood by the window, arms crossed. His face was pale in the glow of the streetlight. You should leave, Arthur. Take the train back to London. Forget this place. Arthur shook his head. I didn't come here to run. William's jaw tightened. Then you'll die here. Arthur didn't answer. He gathered the files in his coat, holstered his revolver, and stepped into storm. The streets were nearly empty, but Arthur felt eyes on him. He moved quickly, head down, the rain soaking his hat brim. A car engine roared to life behind him. Headlights flared, blinding in the downpour. Arthur broke into a run. The black sedan surged forward, tires hissing on wet asphalt. A window rolled down, and a crack of gunfire split the night. Bullets sparked against a brick wall as Arthur dove into an alley. The sedan skidded, reversed, and came after him. Arthur sprinted, his coat heavy with rain, his revolver drawn. He burst out onto the main road. Just as the car swung around the corner, headlights bearing down on him. Arthur leaped in the street, firing twice. Glass shattered, but the car kept coming. He dove aside, rolling across the slick pavement, and scrambled into his own vehicle parked nearby, a battered Ford he had borrowed from William. The engine coughed, then roared to life. The chase was on. The two cars tore through Blackwood's narrow streets, engines howling, tires screaming against the flooded asphalt. Neon signs flickered past in a blur, their reflections smeared across the wet pavement. Arthur gripped the wheel, jaw set, eyes sharp. The sedan closed in behind him, muzzle flashes lighting the storm as bullets punched holes into his rear window. Arthur swerved, the car fishtailing dangerously, but he kept control. He cut down a side street, splashing through water that rose almost to the hubcaps. The sedan followed, relentless. Arthur fired one-handed out the window, forcing the pursuers to duck, but they pressed on. The rain was a curtain, blinding, deafening. Arthur's wipers struggled against the torrent. Ahead, the road curved sharply around a row of warehouses. Arthur's eyes flicked to the ground. A wide pool of water stretched across the bend, reflecting the street like a mirror. An idea struck. Arthur slammed the brakes, spinning the wheel. His car skidded sideways into a narrow alley, hidden by the shadows. The sedan, blinded by the rain and deceived by the reflection in the pool, saw only the illusion of his headlights continuing straight ahead. The black car roared forward, chasing the phantom image in the water. Too late, the driver realized the mistake. The sedan smashed through a barrier at the end of the street and crashed into a steel fence with a screech of metal. Arthur sat in the darkness of the alley, engine idling, breath steady. He watched the wreck through the rain. One of the gunmen crawled from the passenger side, limping, clutching a pistol. Arthur stepped out, revolver raised. The man froze, rain streaming down his face. Arthur advanced slowly, his voice calm. Who sent you? The man spat blood, eyes defiant. You can't stop it. None of you can. Arthur's revolver didn't waver. Try me. But the man only laughed, a hollow sound swallowed by the storm. Then he collapsed, unconscious or dead. It didn't matter. Arthur holstered his weapon and returned to the fort. The rain hammered the roof as he drove back toward William's house. Inside, William was waiting, pacing the floor. He stopped when Arthur entered, soaked and bruised. You're mad, William said. They'll kill you. Arthur dropped the files onto the table. Not if I get to them first. William's eyes flicked to the window. Outside, the storm raged, flooding the streets, turning the town into a maze of water and shadow. This isn't just men with guns, Arthur. It's the rain itself. You've seen it. Arthur lit another cigarette, his hands steady despite the chase. I've seen enough to know it can be beaten. He exhaled smoke, staring at the files. The next sacrifice was scheduled for tomorrow night. The storm was no accident. It was preparation. Arthur crushed the cigarette in the ashtray. Tomorrow, we end this. Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the glass. In the puddle beneath the street lamp, his reflection stood waiting, smiling faintly, as if it already knew the outcome. The morning began like any other for William Halloway. He rose before dawn, the rain already drumming against the roof, and dressed in silence. Arthur was still asleep in the guest room, his coat and revolver laid neatly on the chair beside the bed. William paused at the door, watching his younger brother for a moment. 20 years had passed since they had last shared a roof, and though Arthur looked older, harder, there was still something of the boy he remembered. William sighed, pulled on his boots, and left for the mines. The storm was heavy, but to him it was just another day. He had no idea what the rain would bring before nightfall. Arthur, however, knew. By midday, he had pieced together the truth from the stolen files. The next selection was scheduled for tonight, during the height of the storm. The location was clear, an abandoned industrial warehouse on the edge of town, officially condemned, but still drawing power. He prepared with methodical calm. Revolver loaded, extra rounds in his coat pocket, a knife strapped to his belt. He left William's house without a word, stepping into the deluge. The warehouse loomed like a carcass of steel and concrete, its windows shattered, its roof sagging under the weight of the storm. Yet inside, light glowed faintly. Arthur slipped through a side entrance, his footsteps drowned by the rain. The scene before him was worse than he imagined. A circle of men stood around a shallow basin where rainwater collected through a hole in the roof. They were not strangers. Arthur recognized the police chief, the mayor, and several of Blackwood's wealthiest businessmen. Their faces were grim, their eyes fixed on the bound figure at the center, a young woman, gagged and terrified. Arthur raised his revolver. This ends now. The circle broke in a chaos. Some reached for weapons, others for cover. But a few, those at the center of the conspiracy, did something else. The reflections in the water stirred. Arthur blinked. The men's images in the basin shifted, multiplying, moving independently. One appeared behind him, another to his left. He spun, fired, only to see the bullet tear through empty air. The reflection had lied. Laughter echoed, low and cruel. The police chief stepped forward, his real body still in front of Arthur, but his reflection circling like a predator. You think you understand the rain, detective, but you've only scratched the surface. Gunfire erupted. Arthur dove behind a steel beam, returning fire with precision. He hit one man in the shoulder, another in the leg, but the reflections made it impossible to track them all. A figure lunged at him from the side. He struck, only to realize it was his own reflection, twisted and grinning. Arthur gritted his teeth. He had learned to distrust the rain, but now it was being wielded against him. He slowed his breathing, forcing himself to watch not the reflections, but the subtle tells, the weight of footsteps, the angle of a shadow. He fired again, this time striking true. One of the elites collapsed, his reflection shattering like glass across the basin. The ritual faltered. The bound woman screamed through a gag. Arthur surged forward, cutting her bonds. "Run," he barked. She fled into the storm, but Arthur had overextended. The reflections closed in, hemming him into the circle. His revolver clicked empty. He swung the knife, slashing at phantoms, but the real men pressed in. A blow struck his temple, another his ribs. He fell to his knees, vision swimming. The mayor crouched before him, rain dripping from his hat. "You were never here by chance, Halloway. You were chosen. The rain wanted you." Arthur spat blood, glaring up at him. Then it chose poorly. The mayor smiled coldly. "We'll see." A final strike sent Arthur into darkness. That evening, William walked home from the mines. The storm had not let up, but the streets were eerily calm. Shops were shuttered, lights dimmed, as if the entire town were holding its breath. When he turned the corner onto a street, his heart froze. His house was in ruins, windows shattered, door hanging from its hinges, furniture overturned and broken. The rain poured through the holes, soaking everything inside. Arthur's suitcase lay open on the floor, its contents scattered. William stepped inside, numb. The destruction was deliberate, a message. They knew Arthur had been there. They knew William was his brother. He sank into a chair, head in his hands. For years he had kept his head down, worked his shifts, ignored the whispers of corruption. But now it was at his door. He stood, fists clenched. He could not stay here. He gathered what little he could carry and slipped back into the storm. As he walked through the silent streets, he made a vow. He would find Arthur. Whatever had taken him, whatever darkness ruled the storm, he would not let his brother face it alone. The rain fell harder, blurring the lamps into halos. In a puddle at his feet, William saw his reflection. For a moment, it smiled at him. He did not flinch. He kept walking. Arthur woke to the sound of dripping water. The cell was small, damp, and windowless, its walls sweating with moisture. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. His head throbbed from the blow that had felled him at the warehouse. He sat up slowly, testing his restraints. His wrists were bound, but not tightly enough to cut circulation. They wanted him alive. That was worse. The door creaked open. 2 guards entered, their uniforms official, but their eyes hollow. Behind them came the mayor, his coat immaculate despite the storm outside. "You see, Halloway," the mayor said, voice calm. "You were never here by chance. The rain chose you. You are not an intruder. You are the vessel." Arthur met his gaze without flinching. "I've been called worse." The mayor smiled faintly. "You will understand soon enough." He gestured, and the guards left Arthur alone again. Arthur leaned back against the wall, breathing slowly. He studied the puddle forming beneath the leaking ceiling. His reflection stared back at him, but then it blinked before he did, lips moving in silence. Arthur closed his eyes. He would not give them the satisfaction of fear. Meanwhile, William believed he had found safety. After the destruction of his home, he had taken refuge with an old friend, Thomas, a former soldier who still kept a rifle by his bed. The house was modest, tucked away on a quiet street, and for a brief moment William allowed himself to think he might be safe. But he could not sit idle. That afternoon, he ventured into the rain-slicked streets, searching for any trace of Arthur. He questioned shopkeepers, lingered near the police station, even followed a pair of officers who seemed to be watching him. It was then he noticed it, his own reflection in the puddles, moving differently, turning corners before he did. He felt pursued, not by footsteps, but by his own image. Panic rose in his chest. He hurried back to Thomas's house, heart pounding. Inside, he collapsed into a chair, soaked and breathless. "They're everywhere," he said. "I can't tell if I'm being followed or if it's just the rain. The whole town feels like it's watching me." Thomas poured him a glass of whiskey, sliding it across the table. "You're not wrong, but you can't let it break you. We'll find your brother." William shook his head. "I don't even know where to start. It's like the city itself is against me." Thomas rested a hand on the rifle. "Then we fight the city." The first shot shattered the window. Glass sprayed across the room as bullets tore into the walls. William dove to the floor. Thomas was already moving, rifle in hand, returning fire through the broken pane. The thunder of gunfire mixed with the relentless drumming of rain. Out the back, Thomas shouted. William hesitated. "I can't leave you." "You must." Thomas's voice was fierce. "Find Arthur. He's the only one who can end this. Go." Another volley of bullets ripped through the front door. Thomas fired back, steady and unflinching. William scrambled to his feet, heart hammering, and fled through the kitchen door into the storm. He ran down the alley, the rain blinding him, the sound of gunfire echoing behind. Then came a final burst of shots, louder, closer, and silence. William stopped, chest heaving, staring back into the darkness. He knew what it meant. Thomas was gone. For a moment, grief threatened to crush him. But then he remembered his friend's words, "Find Arthur." He forced himself forward, stumbling into the deserted streets. The rain pooled in the gutters, forming mirrors that stretched across the pavement. In each one, William saw himself, but the reflections did not match his movements. Some turned their heads before he did. Others smiled grimly, as if mocking him. He clenched his fists. "I'll find you, Arthur," he whispered. "I swear it." The reflections rippled, as though they had heard him. Back in his cell, Arthur sat in silence. The puddle at his feet shimmered, and his reflection leaned closer, pressing its hands against the surface as if trying to escape. Arthur stared back, unblinking. "Not yet," he muttered. The bulb flickered, and the cell fell into darkness. Arthur had lost track of time in the cell. The bulb above him flickered endlessly, dripping water forming a shallow pool at his feet. He had stopped counting the hours, but he knew the ritual was close. The air itself seemed to thrum with anticipation, as if the storm outside were waiting for him. The sound of keys rattling broke the silence. The door creaked open, and a guard stepped inside, muttering under his breath. He was careless, too sure of himself. As he bent to tighten Arthur's restraints, his boots slipped on the wet stone. Arthur moved like a striking animal. He lunged, driving his shoulder into the man's chest. The guard stumbled, and Arthur wrenched the pistol from his belt. A muffled shot rang out, echoing in the corridor. The guard collapsed lifeless. Arthur stood over the body, chest heaving. He had no time for hesitation. He gripped the pistol, checked the chamber, and stepped into the hall. The alarm spread quickly. Shouts echoed down the corridor. boots pounding against the floor. Arthur pressed himself against the wall, waiting. 2 guards rounded the corner. He fired twice. Both fell. Another appeared behind him, bullets sparking off the stone. Arthur dove into a side passage, returning fire. The prison became a labyrinth of smoke and echoes. The rain outside seeped through cracks in the ceiling, forming puddles that distorted the light. In them, Arthur saw shadows of men who weren't there, reflections of rifles raised where no one stood. He forced himself to ignore the illusions, focusing only on the sound of real footsteps, the smell of gunpowder. He fought his way upward, each shot bringing him closer to freedom. At last, he burst through a rusted door into the storm. The rain hit him like a wall, washing blood from his hands. He staggered into the night, wounded but alive. Arthur was free, for now. William, meanwhile, had been following his own trail. The city was nearly deserted, the storm keeping most indoors. But William had learned to read the signs. The parked cars that hadn't moved in days, the faint glow of lights in buildings supposedly abandoned, the way certain streets seemed watched. He was close, he could feel it, but he was not as invisible as he thought. As he crossed a narrow street, he caught sight of movement in a puddle. His reflection was not alone. Behind him, in the water's surface, another figure appeared, one that wasn't there when he turned. His stomach dropped. A voice shouted, "There! Get him!" William ran. Boots splashed behind him, the storm swallowing his breath. He darted through alleys, slipping on the slick cobblestones, heart pounding. The reflections betrayed him at every turn, showing his pursuers where he would go before he moved. He tried to lose them, but the city itself seemed to conspire against him. At last, he stumbled into a dead-end courtyard. The men closed in, their flashlights cutting through the rain. William raised his hands, chest heaving. He had no weapon, no chance. Rough hands seized him, forcing him to his knees. "Where's your brother?" one demanded. William said nothing. His silence earned him a blow to the ribs. He gasped, but still refused to speak. The men dragged him to his feet, binding his wrists. "You'll tell us soon enough," one sneered. The storm raged on. Arthur, limping through the outskirts of the city, pressed a hand to his side where a bullet had grazed him. He knew the cult would be hunting him already. He had escaped the prison, but not the ritual. William, bound and beaten, was shoved into the back of a waiting car. Through the rain-streaked window, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in a puddle. It stared back at him, lips moving silently, as if whispering a warning he could not hear. 2 brothers, separated by a storm, each trapped in the web of Blackwood shadows. The ritual was coming, and neither of them could escape it. The storm had not relented. Blackwood lay beneath a curtain of rain, its streets empty, its windows shuttered. Arthur moved through the downpour like a shadow, his coat heavy with water, his side aching from the wound he had taken during his escape. He had nowhere else to go, no allies left. Instinct carried him back to William's house. When he reached it, his heart sank. The windows were shattered, the door splintered, the furniture overturned. Rain poured across the floorboards, dripping from the broken roof. Arthur stepped inside cautiously, revolver in hand. The silence was suffocating. "William," he called. His voice echoed through the ruined rooms. No answer. He searched the house, finding only wreckage. Papers scattered, drawers emptied, the faint smell of gunpowder lingering in the air. He crouched beside a broken chair, running his fingers across the wood. Whoever had done this had been thorough. Arthur sat heavily, exhaustion pressing down on him. He told himself William had escaped, that he was hiding somewhere safe. But the silence gnawed at him. Then he saw it. In a puddle spreading across the floor, his reflection shifted. It was not his own face staring back, but William's, bound, gagged, eyes wide with fear. Arthur blinked, and the image dissolved into ripples. He clenched his fists. Something had happened. Something terrible. William knew exactly what. He sat in a chair, wrists tied, in a dimly lit chamber that smelled of mildew and incense. The men who had captured him stood nearby, their suits immaculate despite the storm. At their head was the mayor, his expression calm, almost paternal. "You are William Halloway," the mayor said, "brother of Arthur Halloway." William glared at him. "And what of it?" The mayor smiled faintly. "Blood is everything. Your brother was chosen by the rain, but he has slipped our grasp. No matter, the bond of blood is strong. You will serve in his place." William's stomach turned. "You're insane." "Perhaps," the mayor said, "but the rain does not lie. The ritual requires a vessel. If we cannot have Arthur, we will have you, and he will come for you. That is the beauty of it." William's heart pounded. They weren't just planning to sacrifice him. They were using him as bait. Back at the ruined house, Arthur found more than broken furniture. On the wall, scrolled in dripping black paint, were words that made his blood run cold. "Your brother will take your place. Come to us, or he dies." Arthur stared at the message, rainwater running down the wall like tears. He knew it was a trap. Every instinct told him to run, to regroup, to find another way. But the thought of William bound and helpless was unbearable. He holstered his revolver, jaw set. "I'm coming, Will," he whispered. William sat in silence as his captors prepared. They spoke in hushed tones, arranging symbols, lighting candles. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him, not as a man, but as a tool. One of them leaned close. "Your brother will come. He cannot resist, and when he does, the rain will claim you both." William closed his eyes. He thought of Arthur, stubborn and relentless, and prayed he would be wise enough to stay away. But in his heart, he knew Arthur would come. He always did. Arthur left the house behind, stepping once more into the storm. The rain fell harder, blurring the street lamps into halos. In every puddle, he saw William's face, pleading, terrified, waiting. The city seemed to whisper around him, the storm carrying voices he could not quite hear. He walked on, revolver heavy at his side, toward the heart of the trap. The convergence had begun. Arthur reached William Street at dawn, when the storm turned the sky the color of ash. He moved with a limp, coat heavy with rain, breath burning in his chest. He had escaped the prison, but not the city's grip. Instinct and hope dragged him back to William's house. The door hung crooked on broken hinges. Inside, rain threaded through the splintered roof, cooling across the floorboards. Furniture lay overturned, glass crunched underfoot, and the air carried the stale tang of gunpowder. Arthur stepped carefully, revolver drawn, scanning the shadows. "William." His voice echoed uselessly. He found the living room half-gutted, a chair toppled near the window. As he crouched, the floor's wide puddle shifted, and for a heartbeat the water did not show Arthur. It showed William, bound to a chair or room he did not recognize, eyes fever-bright with fear. The image rippled, vanished. Arthur pressed his thumb to the wet boards, jaws tight. On the wall, written in streaks of black paint, was a message that made his blood ice-cold. "Your brother will take your place. Come, or he dies." Arthur closed his eyes against the roar of the rain. A trap, obvious and crude, but effective. He holstered the revolver, whispered, "I'm coming, Will," and left the ruined house behind. The old municipal hall sat like a drowned temple, its steps waterfalls, its windows black and unblinking. Inside, candles burned in precise rings, their flames leaning against a wind that wasn't there. The chant rose and fell in a measured pulse, a heartbeat for the room. At the center, bound to a chair beneath an iron skylight, was William. His clothes were soaked through, hair plastered to his skull, wrists raw with a rope's bed. Around him, the high cadres stood in immaculate suits, Macs carved with lines that looked like river maps. Arthur took cover behind a column, scanning. His stomach turned as he understood what he was seeing. The floor was laced with water, and within those puddles were not mere reflections of the room, but living slivers of Blackwood, alleys, storefronts, apartments. In the glass shards scattered along the tiles, windows from streets Arthur had crossed flickered and rearranged. The city was here, in miniature, and had moved. They controlled all of it, every surface, every shining skin of rain, every pane of glass. The whole town was an eye. He stepped into light, revolver raised. "Let him go." The chant faltered. The mayor turned, voice smooth as polished stone. "Arthur Halloway, the rain chose you. The city offered you. Yet here you are, arriving late to your own coronation." Arthur's gaze flicked to William. "He's not your vessel. Blood," the mayor said, almost gently, "calls blood. If we cannot thread the needle with you, we stitch with your brother. The passage opens all the same." The puddle at Arthur's feet rippled. His reflection smiled back with a mouth that wasn't his. Whispers slid through his skull, cold and precise. Then another voice came, deeper than thunder and older than the stone beneath Blackwood. It did not speak from mouths, but from surfaces. "You see me," the voice said, low and delighted. "You see what they worship but cannot name. They're my hands. I am a flood. I am the mirror that swallows." Arthur's breath stilled. He wasn't just staring into the cult trick. He was looking at the source. the presence behind the reflections, the city's dark geometry. He straightened. "If it's me you want," he said, no tremor in his tone. "Take me, strip him a gift, and their hold over the city. I'll give myself to." The reflections shivered as if a great beast had drawn breath. The high cadres glanced about, confused, hearing only the edges of conversation not meant for them. The mayor laughed. "He babbles. Bind him." William lifted his head, eyes blazing. "Arthur, don't." The deep voice dropped to a purr. "You would offer yourself freely? No mortal bargains with me," and walks away. "Your blood will drown in me. Your name will become rain. In return, I will silence them. No more eyes. No more hands." Arthur's fingers tightened around the revolver, then released it. He holstered the weapon and stepped to the very brink of a broad, trembling puddle. "I accept." The candles bent, then snapped upright. The puddles boiled like kettles, glass shards popping with tiny screams. The high cadres jolted as the reflections shattered, their silhouettes stuttering and then winking out. The mayor tore at his mask as a crack split it from forehead to chin. Arthur sank to one knee. His reflection leaned toward him, mirroring his posture perfectly for the first time. No grin, no delay, only a meeting. William wrenched against his bindings. "Arthur, fight it. Don't let it take you." Arthur turned his head, found his brother's eyes, and held them. "I'll end it," he said softly. "For you, for Blackwood. Then come." The voice breathed, vast and intimate. "Be rain." The puddles rose from the floor like sheets of liquid glass, folding over Arthur, swallowing him with hush and weight. The world became water. William saw Arthur's face suspended in the flood, calm and resolute, as if he were stepping through a doorway rather than being consumed. Then the water fell. Arthur was gone. Silence snapped through the hall. The chant failed. The masked faces dulled, their authority evaporating like breath on a mirror. The storm outside unclenched. The rain softened, slackened, thinned. William's ropes sagged, fiber by fiber, until they fell away. He stumbled forward into the circle, knees striking wet tile. Only a single puddle remained at the center, rippling as if something had breathed beneath it. He leaned over, chest trembling. His reflection stared back, and behind it, faint and far, a second face. Arthur's, watching from a depth William could not reach. The mayor lurched toward the altar, hands shaking, voice stripped of its honey. Resumed to write. Nothing answered him. The reflections no longer abated. The puddle showed nothing but the room, dull and blind. The skylight, once a maw for rain, was merely glass again. The city had turned its face away. William rose, inch by inch. He looked at the men who had ruled by thunder and water, and found him ordinary in the dim light. Arthur opened his eyes to a world of glass. He stood in an endless plain of mirrors, each one rippling like water. Behind the translucent surfaces, he saw them. The missing people of Blackwood, men, women, children, all trapped, their faces pressed against the glass, eyes pleading. They were captives of the reflection realm, prisoners of the entity that fed on their fear. But Arthur was different. No chains bound him, no glass held him. He walked freely among them. Then a voice came, vast and hollow, echoing from every surface. "Why did you give yourself to me, mortal? Why choose sacrifice when bullets and questions could not save you?" Arthur stood tall, his coat dripping with spectral rain. His voice was steady, because where investigations fail, and where gunfire cannot reach, sacrifice can. That is the only language you understand. The mirror shuddered. The voice howled, a scream of rage and despair that shook the endless plain. "No, you have undone me." The glass cracked, splintering into 1,000 shards. The captives gasped as the walls that held them dissolved. The entities cried, faded into nothingness, leaving only silence. Arthur closed his eyes. He had won. In the hall, William lifted his head. The puddle at his feet rippled. Slowly, a figure emerged within it. Arthur's reflection, eyes burning with resolve. Then, with a surge of impossible force, Arthur burst from the surface of a polished plank on the wall, leaping into the air, revolver in hand. The cultists gasped. Arthur landed hard, firing shot after shot. Bullets tore through the masked men before they could react. One by one they fell, their illusions gone, their power stripped. Only the mayor remained, frozen in terror, spared by Arthur's hand. The police would come for him later. Justice would be human, not supernatural. As the last echoes of gunfire faded, the air shifted. The puddles across the hall shimmered, and from them, the missing citizens of Blackwood stepped forth, dazed but alive. Mothers clutched children, neighbors embraced, voices rose in disbelief and relief. William stumbled to his feet, tears streaming down his face. Arthur crossed the circle, holstering his revolver, and pulled his brother into a fierce embrace. "It's over," Arthur whispered. William nodded, unable to speak. Days later, the brothers stood on the platform of Blackwood's small station. The storm had passed, the sky pale and clear. Behind them, the town began to heal, its people free at last. Arthur placed a hand on William's shoulder. "We've done all we can here. It's time to leave this place behind." The train to London hissed, steam curling into the morning air. The brothers boarded together, side by side, carrying with them the memory of shadows and rain. As the train pulled away, Blackwood receded into the distance. The reflections in the windows showed only their own faces. No tricks, no whispers, no ghosts. The first time in months, the world was theirs again. Subscribe for more videos.